Welcome to Root Cause Medicine, presented by Spirit of Health. Well, hey everyone, today we have Richard Paradise as a guest on our awesome podcast. Welcome, Richard. Nice
Thank
to
you,
see
Vaughn.
you.
Good to be here. Good to see you.
You're welcome. I just wanted to start out just asking, just to let our audience know about you, your background, who you are, why you got into this industry.
It all started with a personal health crisis in 2004. I had pericarditis, which turned into a cardiac tamponade. That's when fluid fills the pericardial sac and starts to crush your heart.
Wow.
It was in the spring, summer, so I thought I had sinus infection, right? So I didn't do anything about it. And next thing you know, I had temperatures and I had ice packs on my head for so hot and blankets around my body. And then I hallucinated and I realized this isn't a sinus infection. Go to the doctor does a chest x-ray, says, your heart is 2 times the size of a normal heart. And it's one of those come to the Lord moments. And you're just like, I was positive they could do something about this and hoping that it wasn't something rare. Well, then I went to a cardiologist. Cardiologist said, no, your heart is normal size. But the sac around your heart that protects it filled up with all of this fluid, and you were really close to dying. So I go into surgery. The doctors, I was up during the whole process. The doctors pulled out a beaker full of cranberry juice is what it looked like. And he was like, 500 cc's. He goes, you were this close to dying. So after the procedure, I went virally arthritic, and it would have been like I was a very unhealthy 115-year-old. Wow. Yeah. And I did the steroids, the Z-Pack, and I was like great after the first 6 of them. And then as we dwindled down, it started to creep back in. My Uncle Joe and my Aunt Rose in Arizona invited me out to Arizona. They're like, come out here, recuperate, get better. I get out there. They're like, how do you want to do this? Do you want to do it the natural way? Do you want to go doctors? My aunt was one of those women who always did things naturally, in the 60s and 70s. She wasn't weird, but she was on that spectrum of natural health. Long story short, they took me out to this doctor in Arizona, in Prescott, Dr. Jane, and she was a microscopist, and she was a functional medical doctor. Mm-hmm. And she looked at my blood on a microscope, and she was showing it to me. And I was just amazed at what I saw. Mm-hmm. And then she starts going through everything and explaining to me what was going on, why this happened. And at such a young age, I was 34 at the time, you start to contemplate your mortality and you're like, I don't want to go yet, you know? So you do everything you can. So I was real strict and I adhered to the protocols. I detoxed way harder than I ever had to because I was really scared. Long story short, I felt like, and Dr. Jane felt like this was my calling. And I ended up interning with her for the next year and a half, driving from Cave Creek, Arizona to Prescott every day, Monday through Friday, an hour-and-a-half trip. Wow. To just go sit with her and her patients and just take notes in the background, the different blood shapes, what she said they were. And then that motivated me to go and get a certified nutritional what do they call that? Certified nutritional, what do they call it when you're a not a health practitioner, you're a consultant, that's the label. Okay. I went and got certified as a certified nutritional, can't even remember it again. Consultant, certified nutritional consultant. And I was high. You get high off of that. You want to help everybody now type of thing. And I decided to come back to Kansas and open up shop. And then I worked at various wellness centers in Kansas. And then I went to school, Trinity, and got my ND at the time, which took about 3.5 years. And I used a microscope to kind of show people what was going on in the body, as well as looking at lab works and giving them a functional, perspective on things. So that's how I got into it. The reason I got into enzymes was because Dr. Jane used an enzyme, protease, to help rid me of a lot of inflammation. Gotcha. And I was such a fan on it, and I was sold on it because I personally experienced, the benefits of it. So I saw that she was selling a lot of it, and I researched it, and I was like, oh, this would be interesting. Mm-hmm. So I went, spoke to a couple of private label people, ended up developing a blend, talked with a couple of practitioners that I was friends with at the time, colleagues, and then that was the first one that came out. And then supplements after that. So that's how I got into the business, so to speak.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing. So yeah, I mean, enzymes are, crucially important. I've been using enzymes in, my wellness center for years as a naturopath. And I don't think a lot of people really know a lot about enzymes. People know about vitamins and minerals and vitamin C and, all these different things that we need, but enzymes isn't at the forefront, of what people are thinking of when they're thinking of like, what do I need for my health? Oh, I need an enzyme. Well, if they're thinking that, it's probably because they have a digestive problem, right?
Usually.
So a good question, and what I'd love to share with our audience today is like the power of enzymes, how crucially important they are, like how they can really radically change people's health. Because I've actually been using enzymes to radically change people's health for years. And I think when people hear those stories, those testimonies, it makes them like, wow, like I need that, or my uncle needs that, or my grandpa needs that, or whatever. But I think just to start with giving people a general understanding, my question would be, what do you see as the difference between what people commonly think of when they think of enzymes, which is digestive enzymes, versus the term I use, maybe use a different term, but systemic enzymes?
So enzymes are the highly trained, specified workers in the body. Nothing happens in the body without an enzymatic reaction. They facilitate and catalyze change, right? They get things together, they make a process happen, and then they specifically deliver them or escort them wherever they need to go. And nothing happens in the body without an enzymatic reaction. When it comes to digestion, typically what happens is there's something underlying in the stomach going on, because the gastric lining of the stomach through chief cells should be able to secrete pepsinogen, right? And then that gets activated via hydrochloric acid into pepsin, which digests and starts to break down the proteins that we ingest as food. So typically, if people are having digestive issues, there's something going on in their stomach. So at this point now, the body will move the partially digested food out. Could be 10, 12 hours later. That's not normal digestion, but food can stay in your stomach for up to 18 hours. It just feels like it never left. Anyway, at that point, when it hits the duodenum, the pancreas is secreting proteolytic enzymes, lipase, other enzymes as well. So now the goal is, with taking digestive enzymes, is to support pancreatic function and digestive function. So that's why we take digestive enzymes. And you want to get everything that you're putting into your body nutritionally. So like I said earlier, digestive enzymes not only will chop them up into usable parts, but they'll get them into the usable constituents. Proteins become amino acids, carbs become glycogen, glucose, or fat, and then the fats turn into either monoglycerides like EPA or DHA and fatty acids. So then they can be delivered. Systemic is the term that's used. And that's just an enzyme. Could be anything, really. Could be a protease, could be a nattokinase, a serrapeptase, could be phytase. If you're taking it without food and it's able to get activated in the intestinal canal, where it's a little bit more alkaline than the harsh environment of the stomach, what happens now is these enzymes are able to transport through the intestinal barrier, through the microvilli, and into the bloodstream. And that's now they're in the system, right? And they can have a systemic effect. So if there's inflammation, if there's an autoimmune response going on, if there's pain, if there's rash, whatever the ailment might be, right? These systemic enzymes are going to focus specifically on what they do in the system. And it's going to help you out a lot, especially with pain, as I've experienced it with the proteases. So that's the difference between digestive and systemic. And to answer something that you mentioned earlier, not a lot of practitioners incorporate them into their protocols, but then there are some like yourself who have just been using them for years. So it's I don't want to jump the gun, but it kind of is like, how does that fit into that client's protocol and what you have in store for them?
Yeah. So before we get too far, your company is called
Perfect Balance Enzymes.
Perfect Balance Enzymes, and you have a few different products. I guess a question would be, because I get this question a lot, is, how do I know if I need a digestive enzyme? And then, the famous question, well, should I take digestive enzymes because then that's keeping my body from creating its own digestive enzymes and I'm going to get reliant on it, and I should be able to digest my food normally, and do I really have to take digestive enzymes? So what would you say to that?
I think that's always interesting, an interesting perspective from patient to patient, because people don't want to get reliant on it, but the precursor to that is, I have to do something about this, right?
I'm in trouble.
Yeah. So the fear is, am I going to get hooked on this versus am I going to get well? So no, you don't inhibit the pancreas or any of the gastric enzymes from secreting or doing their job. You can't get hooked on them, so to speak. But what you will notice is that as your digestion gets better, it's going to be symptomatic to some degree, right? We want to get optimal gastric secretions going again to help break down food. We want to actually chew our food, right? And give the stomach a chance to break it down, right? So that's where the digestive enzymes come in, really delivering it. So our enzyme potential might be to some degree lessened because of other things going on in the body, lifestyle, stress, whether it's emotional, physical, nutritional. And what happens from there is we need to deliver those nutrients, or at least break them down into usable parts. So if somebody's experiencing GERD or bloating, or just basic indigestion, if they start to feel some joint pain, almost like arthritic, that tends to be a symptom of not breaking things down, causing inflammation in the system. So what we do as practitioners is, okay, let's remove certain things from your diet to limit that and help us get to the cause. So that's when I would incorporate digestive enzymes as well as gastric support as well.
So because there's, 1,001 digestive enzymes on the market,
Literally,
what would make yours different or unique? I mean, I could share a way I've used it, I feel like uniquely, and you could tell me your thoughts on this. Now, of course, people have what we'd call digestive insufficiency. Like they just don't have enough enzymes and juices to digest food, and they need help. And how are we going to get our nutrients into our body if we can't digest our food, right?
Exactly.
So that's crucial. But what I've seen it do that I've been amazed by, and you could speak to it, maybe it's the concentration of the amount of enzymes you use, or like the strength of it, or just the blend itself. But I've seen it really clean people's guts out.
Amen.
Like clean out toxins and poisons. And specifically, I know hemicellulase and cellulase enzymes, they can break down the protein structure of these infectious organisms like candida and yeast and fungus and things like that. So like I've actually been using your digestive enzymes, right, to use them therapeutically for people for candida or fungus, or just what I tell them is I say, you could even take the digestive enzymes. Of course, you can take it with food, but you could even take it on an empty stomach, because it's going to clean up all the old toxins and waste and poisons and gluten and all these things people have issues with. Like it could clean up some of this old stuff in the gut. Have you seen that?
Yes. And I was going to say, people do take it systemically. So the thing with digestive enzymes, or enzymes in general, is they need three things to turn on and be activated. They need pH, they need water, and they need temperature. And once they get those, then they can go and do their thing. So the rationale behind our digestive enzyme product was, let's get enough of the enzymes that are specific to the American diet, right? And where people kind of err on the side of nutrition. And also those who are high performers as well, to get them the most out of their foods. So we formulated it with that idea in mind, so that the levels of protease. So protease is an enzyme that breaks down proteins. Well, some of the protease in there gets activated in the gastric pH between 1.5 and 4.5, and then it curves off. Like it'll get maximized at like 2, and then it'll stop and fall off about 3.5, 4. And then the rest of the protease that goes into the small intestine, that has a chance to help again once it gets activated in the almost alkaline pH of the intestine. So it's able to support pancreatic function as well. And if it's taken, if there's left over, then we can use that systemically. So that was just a small example of the protease, but like the hemicellulase content, the phytase, the lipase, almost 6,000 units of lipase in there. So we tried to compete with the best that was out there and make ourselves relevant,
Right.
Secondarily, but primarily to do good and to help first. So those high dosages that are in there also help systemically, and people have used them with biofilms, the candida, helping to break down the cellular wall.
Would you suggest people, do some kind of a, diet change or something with their enzymes? Like, they need digestive enzymes because they have digestive problems, but would you suggest, like, along with it, like, you probably should change your diet too? So maybe you're not reliant on them, quote unquote, like long term?
I've seen it happen with a online customer of ours. She ordered Digest faithfully every month. I came up with a discount code for her and her name. Anyway, long story short, she used them for a certain amount of time. She went through her process, and then I hadn't heard from her in a while. And so I reached out to make sure everything was okay, see if she needed anything. She's like, no, I got better. I don't need them anymore. So that's the biggest testimony to me right there. We don't want you to have to use these. We want you to make the changes and address the root cause.
Right.
And as a practitioner. Did I answer that?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
That was great. All right. So yeah, we've talked a lot about digestive enzymes. You mentioned systemic enzymes. I feel like an enzyme that's big right now. It's popular. I mean, some of us have known about it for a long time, but others, this might be the first time they've ever even heard of it. But nattokinase. So can you speak to, like, what is nattokinase? Why are people taking nattokinase? And maybe importantly, why is nattokinase like really crucial right now because of what's happening in our world?
So start with your last question. Nattokinase is important just right off the bat for two different reasons. First reason being the health and wellness of our nation and the obesity and the lack of physicality among our population. Secondly would be the pandemics, the epidemics, right? The viral infections.
Heart issues.
Yeah, the myocarditis, the pericarditis even. And these are viral infections that get a hold of you, and myocardial, specifically the middle wall of the heart, is responsible for contracting and pumping blood through the heart. So when it gets inflamed, right, when we get that itis in there, what's happening now is we're limiting how much blood flow can happen. And obviously that's not good because every part of our body needs blood, right? So the benefits of natto are its clot degrading, plaque degrading, fibrin busting abilities. And you would talk to a regular doctor about it and they would be like, oh, there's no clinical
research.
Evidence on that. And the thought that first comes into my mind is because you're reading every bit of literature that comes out, right? And there's thousands of pieces daily coming out. There's no way anybody can keep up with it. So a part of the heart behind this was not just putting a nattokinase supplement on the market and not just understanding what it does, it's what's the effective range of it. And to your question, why aren't people using it? And the more you dig, you see that these studies have been done to verify it, not only its efficacy, but the findings of what it is that it does.
Yeah. Go to PubMed and type in ginger. It'll blow your mind.
Exactly.
And then it'll make you wonder, like, why are doctors saying this? Either they were taught that in school or they've actually never, like, pulled up the website and typed it in themselves or they don't want to believe it. I don't know. But, like, there's clearly ridiculous amounts of research on natto and how crucially beneficial it is to human health and the health of our blood. Like Leviticus 17, the life of all flesh
Is in the blood.
is in the blood.
Yeah.
So if our blood's not well, we can't be well, like period. Like that's it. When somebody passes, that blood turns rancid within a few minutes.
Yes.
So I got it.
Hold
on, let me go back. So Leviticus 17 says the life of all flesh is in the blood. So we can't be healthy. We can't be well without our blood. And so, you look at what's happening right now, you look at heart disease, cardiovascular disease, rapid increase in myocarditis.
Mm-hmm.
I think mostly from unjust medical procedures happening right now that are contrary to human health, especially within the last 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So like why is natto, like everybody should be on natto, or, I'm not just like, let's not just push natto, but like everybody should be thinking about what they're putting in their body, thinking about how to prevent heart disease. That was already the number one killer before this rapid rise in myocarditis and these other thrombosis and these issues happening right now. How does natto deal with these things?
Like I said earlier, it breaks these things down. It degrades them. So when we have a lot of fibrin in the blood, it's breaking that down. Clots, thrombosis, plaque. It even shrinks the carotid arteries, intimal vein. So where it constricts as we start to have cardiovascular disease and limits blood flow to the brain, it's actually widening it back out. I mean, there's a study done on over 1,000 people that show this. And what was the other part of the question with the?
Just the benefits of natto with heart disease and the rise of cardiovascular disease and thrombosis. And
they'll edit this. So if you would think of the circulatory system as a highway and during the worst rush hour traffic that you can imagine, and let's just say that 75% of the cars on the road were fibrin, clots, plaques, right? That's going to limit the flow of traffic getting there. So what nattokinase does is it pulls those slow cars off the road, right? And it increases traffic flow once again.
Yeah.
So once we do that, obviously we're able to deliver more nutrients to the tissues in the body, but we're also able to remove more waste. So that's so important, not only from the heart issues that we're facing in our country, but also the viral epidemic that's going on, right? We're increasing blood flow, so the myocarditis or the pericarditis isn't limited by what's coming in and out of it. So that's how it's helpful there in that capacity.
Yeah, I think it's important for people just to clearly understand. And I say this just because I know what's being said out there in the medical system. I've seen thousands of people, so I know what people are told when they come into the office related to like heart blockages and cholesterol and atherosclerosis, this congestion, this hardening of the artery, so to speak. Like, I think I just really want people to clearly understand that it can be reversed. Like, one, it can be reversed. You can have a major blockage in your artery. Like, who doesn't know somebody who's had a heart attack?
Seriously.
Right?
Yeah.
And had stents put in, right? So one, you can reverse this. But two, and I've told this people for years and I stand behind it, if you take systemic enzymes, natto or some other protease, some blend of systemic enzymes, you can absolutely prevent any major cardiovascular episode. So how powerful of a statement is it to think about strokes and heart attacks being the number one killer and the whole population knowing that there's actually something you can take. Even if your diet and lifestyle is not perfect, there's something you can take that's so powerful that can clean up your blood that you won't have a heart attack or stroke.
Yeah, you'd have to be on that. You would want to take it, right? Especially when the side effects are really nothing. The only thing you would consider a person not taking it is if they have a history of microbleeds in their brain, right? Because it increases circulation.
Right.
But it doesn't interfere with blood thinners like Coumadin or warfarin, right? It doesn't inhibit the clotting process that vitamin K does with support of that. So I touched on it a little bit earlier. The reason why we got into natto was because of the evidence that we found. In 2016, in Japan, a study was done on 1,062 humans. And to find this gold in PubMed was just like, okay, this is the title that I'm looking for. Let's see what happened. 1,062 people for over a year. Now, typically when you see nattokinase supplements, usually they're in the dosage of 2,000 to 4,000 fibrinolytic units per capsule, right? So we'll get to that in a second, the dosage. But what this study showed was over the course of a year in Japan, Japanese are relatively healthier than Americans, right? Less incidence of obesity and CVD and everything like that. The incident of clot, fibrin, plaque, even hyperlipidemia, where we have elevated blood fats in our blood circulating, were reduced from 60% to 90% in the course of a year, right? Wow. That's incredible. And in the report, in the published med research, it kind of hints and leads us to America. And greater effect was had in people who were obese, sedentary, smoked, drank. Like the people who didn't take care of themselves, they had even a greater response to the nattokinase. So we're talking about lowering cholesterol and triglycerides, which is going to help us hormonally and obviously with regard to the cardiovascular disease, in the nation. So the dosage now, they're saying 2,000 to 3,000 fibrinolytic units. Doesn't scratch the surface. It's when you get to over 3,000, you start to see some of the circulatory benefits. Minimal, though, minimal. When you get over 6,000, you start to see a little more degradation of fibrin, right? A little thrombosis breakdown. But the magic number that these people took daily for a year was 10,800 fibrinolytic units. Okay. And that just blew me away. And here we are, everybody in the industry, the enzyme world is following suit, right? Okay, this company has that, this company has that. And
you mean with the lower dosages?
Yes. Yeah. Because they're unaware of this research. Right. And I don't know that they didn't do it or their search needs to be refined. But it's just the way of the warrior, we're just going to go along with it. So that's when we decided, let's make a difference, but let's put something out there that people in our country, and hopefully around the world, but specifically in our country, can have a dose available to them where they don't have to be taking 2,000 IUs. They'd have to take 5 capsules a day. Right. That for a year. That gets very expensive. Yeah. Right.
I'll never forget when I first started using your natto, I had a patient who was a gal who another doctor she was working with had put her on natto. And, it's typical for people to come in and like, hey, I want to look through my supplements and what should I be taking? What should I not? Like she had heard about the benefits in natto, wanted to be on natto. And I'm like, hey, let's look at it. So she was paying $80 for a bottle with 60 capsules, and it was 2,000 fibrinolytic units, per capsule. And so I pulled out yours and I showed it to her, and it was the same price. And it was 14,000, I think. Isn't that right? 14,000 fibrinolytic units per capsule. So 7 times more for the same price.
Yeah. Yeah. The heart is getting people, better and making it affordable and accessible. Right. But we're a very, very small operation. We don't have 100 employees and all of this marketing and all of these, costs that take off of the top end. So it's kind of almost like a non-profit almost, where we take a salary and my hours are like farmers' hours with the intention of getting it out there into the masses. And that always warms my heart. And I just love when I get testimonies like that, or people will email online, a great review or something like your product is so great and it helped. And that's just the testimony to what it is we're doing out there.
Mm-hmm. So how much natto, so people might hear this and might think, wow, like I need this, or my dad needs this, or my grandpa needs this, or, whatever. How much do you usually recommend people take of the natto?
Considering there are no side effects, very limited. And for myself, I'm taking 2 in the morning and 2 at night, right? Overweight, been just buried down at the desk for a while, haven't been working out. I want to take that off the table, at least with the flow of my blood, right? That's for me. But the research shows that 10,800 units, right? 1 capsule. So of ours, you would just take 1 capsule a day systemically.
Right. So you could just take 1 a day.
Yeah, that's why. And we give you like 2 months worth, right? 60 capsules.
Right.
Although there was a mistake in the first couple of cases that went out, our bottling machine, our capsule counter was putting 90 in the bottles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they were getting like...
People got a sweet deal.
Yes, they did. We're like, where are all the bottles?
That's funny.
Yes, but at least 1 a day. And if you're concerned, being that there's no side effects, and you're working with somebody to talk you through this, 2 a day.
Okay.
I've even went as high as 15 a day. When we first got them, I was like, okay, time to see if there's any side effects, anything in the stomach that happened, maybe bowel movements, anything noticeable for a week. 15 a day, 10 a day, with coffee, without coffee, with CBD, without CBD,
right?
And nothing happened. But I will say this, every once in a while, I get that little poke in my chest. And it's a reminder, like, is that a muscle spasm? And then I have to remember, no, you were the guy that thought pericarditis / cardiac tamponade was a sinus infection. So this could be something cardiovascular.
Right.
And it happens like recurrently, but ever since I started taking the natto, I don't have that anymore. So I know I'm buying myself time at least to get to the point where I'll actually start, making the lifestyle change. Yeah.
So what I tell people a lot is, many people there might be concerned about heart issues, family history, or whatever reasons, or just lifestyle issues, and they're told by their doctor to take an aspirin a day, right? So if you think about what an aspirin does, aspirin, it's a drug, like it's a pharmaceutical drug. It's an aspirin, right? Kidney failure, liver failure, ulcers, like it's a drug that can cause problems, but they take it so that you'll prevent heart attack or, cardiovascular disease. Would you think that literally just taking 1 natto a day not only could do the same thing, but would actually have benefits versus a pharmaceutical drug like aspirin actually has negative side effects?
I do, and I would, right? Because once we're taking the natto and we're increasing that circulation in the right dosages, of course, but now we're reducing gastric stress from the aspirin, or maybe intestinal stress that's going on. So it's a win-win. And I don't want to be like a CYA type of thing, but you have to talk to people, and see what's going on with you specifically. There is minimal research out there with aspirin in conjunction with enzymatic therapies, right, where they can work together. But that was in very, very specific cases. Yeah. So where the research stands firm, you have to apply it to that base. But I see no reason why it shouldn't be taken daily, and especially in lieu of.
Yeah, cool. Well, we've talked a lot about natto, of course, because I think it's important right now for, like I said, the life of all flesh is in the blood. We need our blood to be healthy. We can use it to prevent heart disease. Again, you look at what's going on right now. There are things being put in the human body that are actually causing thrombosis and myocarditis and heart disease. Yeah. And I think a lot of people know what we're talking about. So to have something so important and powerful for prevention or reversal is huge. So I just wanted to highlight that. But maybe moving away from natto.
Can I add one thing?
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
With regard to the crisis that we're facing in this country, there is very convincing research out there that shows that nattokinase degrades the spike protein in certain viruses.
Yeah.
So when we're taking that, if you want to talk about a bonus, if there's anything active in your system like that, there is convincing research to show that it's breaking down the S protein, the spike.
That's huge.
It's tremendous. And at least what that does is take a little bit of a load off your mind, but it's going to render it from replicating. Right. That's what the research is suggesting. Cannabidiol is another one that not only, and it has to be the oil, not inhaling it, convincingly shows that not only does it inhibits SARS-CoV-2 replication, but also promotes the host innate immune response, which is great. So those two in conjunction together are incredible, as well as some other things. But I just wanted to add that because
that's huge.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, everybody could benefit, from taking something as simple as natto. Because, kind of circling back, like what I said in the beginning is people know about vitamin C and magnesium and vitamin D and XYZ, right?
Serious.
But and they know that we need those. They're important. I can name 5-10 reasons why I need those things. But enzymes hasn't been at the top of people's list, and I think it should be. And I think people just need an understanding. They need to hear about it. They know the benefits of it. And that would be one of those things like that just everybody could take, even if it's just 1 or 2 a day, that, could be life-changing and prevent, future heart issues. But I did want to ask another question just because, I know systemic enzymes, there's a lot of different types of systemic enzymes. And I know you have a protease blend. It's a proteolytic enzyme. And so I guess I'm just curious your thoughts on the need or the importance of protease and how is that different from natto?
So protease does have some fibrolytic power where it breaks down the fibrin and increases circulation. But depending on what kind of protease it is, it's really good at breaks down digestive proteins, yes. Helps escort digestive proteins, the amino form, to where they need to go to the tissues. But systemically, the benefit there is the reduction in inflammation and what it does with regard to rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune diseases in general. There are these T cells and B cells and these different mediator molecules of the white blood cells, of the white blood cell family called cytokines, right? And we get these cytokine storms and this autoimmune function turns on. So what protease is really good at doing is the alpha-2 macroglobulins, the tumor necrosis factor, alpha. It's really good at capturing those and taking them out of the system so that they can't signal for another immune response, right? So that's what it's really good for, the reduction of inflammation. So it can be applied to almost every autoimmune process, but I lost my train of thought for a second. Give me a sec. But another thing protease does is it works as a great adjunct because if we can increase circulation, so if you were looking through a microscope and you saw blood cells kind of sticking together and pulling on each other, that's called protein linkage, right? That's an endocrine, a signal of an endocrine dysfunction going on or stress. But what it tells us is that there are proteins in the plasma, and what it's doing is it's coating the red blood cell, right? So now the receptor sites, its actual charge, right? Its energy potential is being muted. And what happens is the cells start to become sticky and tacky and they pull. So when we look at blood work and we see elevated albumins or decreased albumins, total protein high or really low, globulin specifically, it's going to let us know that we're having this inflammation in our system due to undigested protein. So yeah, of course, digestive enzymes would help. But going back to the car analogy, once we take those extracellular proteins off the road, we're increasing circulation. And all that to say, when protease is taken as an adjunct with other protocols, whether it's an arthritic protocol, an adrenal protocol, a gastric insufficiency protocol, whatever it is, it's only going to enhance the ability of that protocol to work more effectively and efficiently because it has that support. Sure. And then there's another aspect of protease, depending on the kind, which is really great for the GI tract, serves as a prebiotic, but also increases the blood flow and the bacteria that's going to the brain. So it's really applicable to neuro support protocols as well.
Okay. Wow, that's good to know. Yeah, I didn't know that about the neurological effect. So are you saying that, I use the term rouleau, but like sticky blood where the red blood cells are stacked on top of each other, are you saying that's mainly a protein problem?
Yeah, well, rouleau, that's stacking, where it looks like a stack of poker chips, is a great indicator of stress, inflammation, a disease process going on in the body. We're really seeing a decline of life. So that's a really serious condition, the rouleau. So yes, it will help separate that and remove those because it's really some sort of protein that's holding them together into that. It's fascinating to see that. Yeah. I'll have to send you the links of seeing that in somebody's blood live, and then them wanting to go, hey, what is that stack of coins? And you try to be as straightforward as possible.
Yeah, totally. So you mentioned some of the benefits of, protease related to like autoimmune, inflammation, some of those specific things. We know natto is good for the blood, cardiovascular system, prevention. There's another enzyme, serrapeptase, that I haven't used as much. I've primarily used proteolytic enzymes and natto and digestive enzymes. I haven't used serrapeptase a lot. I don't know what you think about how important serrapeptase is, but I know you have a serrapeptase, so clearly it's important for something. What I had heard for serrapeptase is two things, which sounds interesting because they don't even seem related. But what I heard about serrapeptase is one is clearing out sinuses, specific to sinus issues, mucus, sinus. But then the other thing, which again, it doesn't seem related, but for injuries, sports injuries. So speeding the tissues and, ligaments or sprains or strains or, athletes or just any person wanting to heal injured tissue. Can you speak on that?
Yes. First, with regard to mucus and the lungs in general, during the first viral infections that were going on, there was circulating PubMed out there about the benefits of serrapeptase with regard to the lung tissue, right? So it was being applied to that because serrapeptase does have fibrinolytic ability, but natto is 4 times greater with regard to plaque, clot, and fibrin. Okay. So where natto really shines is the two areas that you were talking about. So the ability to get an enzyme into the lungs, right, into the nasal canal to reduce that sort of backup congestion and also potential toxicity in the system is tremendous. And then with regard to, seasonal time of year with allergies and everything like that, but then with regard to high performance athletes or athletes in general, what happens is when we get a pain, a strain, tissue damage or something like that, the body naturally quarantines that area and shuttles water into it and blood into it, not only to quarantine it and prevent it from infection and things like that, but also to shuttle in the enzymes. And that's what's really effective about the serrapeptase. Protease has the same type of response in that it drastically reduces post-workout inflammation if you're not looking for the growth side of it and you want to be able to perform the next day again without the pain. But serrapeptase has even more of a greater effect than the protease in that area.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Well, that's great. I don't know if there's any other things you want to mention related to, enzymes or your products. Again, the main ones I've been seeing benefits with is the digest, the natto, probably primarily. The protease, I think I'm going to start using more, especially with inflammation and autoimmune, because that's a big deal. Would you say in general, like again, just kind of circling back to a general understanding of enzymes where we could kind of close with, is I've referred to enzymes as a cleanup crew. So if you think about, we're talking about digestive enzymes. We're talking about specific ones like for digestion, but also natto, serrapeptase, protease, cleanup crew, like that, primarily like cleaning the body. And you had mentioned in the beginning, like enzymes are the catalyst that make things happen in the body. So clearly a big part of what needs to happen in the body and should be happening more in the body is cleaning up damage. Because everybody in this world has damage that's happened to their bodies.
Agreed, and especially in that capacity with regard to removing toxic information that's in our system, but the specific response that it facilitates is, I think, one of the main blessings in enzymes. So if you're going in with a natto, a sera, or a protease, something like that, you're going to get a specific response to work in conjunction. It has its own multitude of benefits in it, but with something else, it's even compounded. To go back to something that you brought up earlier with regard to why a lot of medical professionals aren't aware of why these things aren't incorporated, and we see more and more that are becoming this way, because at the end of the research, right, just scroll all the way down to whatever research article you're looking at and it'll say something to the effect of more research is warranted in this area as it's applied to this, health concern, so that effective medicines can be made.
Right.
So that's why they're not hearing of it at that point, because somebody's not approaching them and saying, hey, we figured out a way. And there is research out there where they're working with these nattos, the serrapeptase, their curcumin, they're medicalizing them. They're turning them into medicines. And the response that they're getting is really very fascinating in of itself. But that's the reason why they're not, because somebody's not coming to them and saying, this is the product that we have. You're in bed with us at your hospital or whatever it is, and this is what we want you to promote. And the doctors are very analytical. Okay, it's alleviating all of this stuff, boom, boom, boom. And then they get it out and they try it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Rich.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, that was very informative. And I just hope everybody learns something more about enzymes and their importance and can incorporate them into their lives. Our whole focus mission is to, our mission statement is to declare God's rightful place in medicine through education and empowerment.
Amen.
And that God has a better way than what the medical system is using.
Amen.
More powerful, works with the body, not against the body, doesn't have side effects, has side benefits. And God has provided so many tools. So we just need to be educating people about it, empowering people, and getting them to use these things that not only work, but are a better way and can actually even get them from being dependent on the medical system.
Agreed. Real quick, I wanted to add this. You talked about at the cellular level earlier. So in 2009, the Indian Journal of Psychology releases The Biochemistry of Belief, right? This study on belief. And Indians have their unique perspective of the way they experience holistic living. And one of the nuggets in this research paper was that every cell in your body knows exactly what you're thinking and feeling at all times. So you want to talk about the effect that our thoughts, our diet, our lifestyle, emotional, spiritual health has on our overall health in the body. This article speaks into it. So in addition to, making nutritional and exercise changes, but the belief aspect of it. And they show you how when people believed a thing, right, it has even more compounded effects. It might be,
Sure.
you might think it's the placebo effect, but even the placebo effect speaks into the biochemistry of belief.
Yeah. Amen.
Amen. Did you have anything that I didn't go into as much that you wanted me to speak into more?
No, unless
No?
there's something about enzymes you wanted to cover. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Rich. That was very informative, and yeah, it was fun to talk to you as always.
As always, thanks for having me.